I took my selfish sister's 3 kids after she abandoned them. Years later, they're giving me money to show their gratitude, but now she's furious and demanding it for herself. My name is Lisa, and I am 48 years old. My younger sister, Diana, is 46. Growing up, we never really got along. She always acted like she was better than me and treated me like I was beneath her. As soon as we finished high school, we went our separate ways. I chose to go to college, while she decided to move in with her boyfriend. Looking back, it was a good thing that her boyfriend had money. Our parents never would have been able to afford the cost of her living on her own. But Diana made it very clear that she did not care about our parents' opinions. She was going to live her life the way she wanted, and nothing they said would change that. So, they never tried to stop her and just let her do as she pleased. By the time she turned 20, she had twin daughters. A year later, she had a son. She was still living with her boyfriend, and while my parents were happy for her, they were also worried. Diana had 3 kids, no job, and no way to support them on her own. She relied completely on her boyfriend's money to take care of herself and her children. She never married him, which I think was a mistake. If she had, she might have been able to get alimony after their breakup. They eventually split when Diana discovered he had been cheating on her. He did at least give her child support, but he wanted nothing to do with the kids. He signed away his parental rights and walked away. At the time, my nieces were 3 and my nephew was only 2. They were too young to understand what was going on, but my sister was now on her own. She had no income and no way to care for her children by herself. Diana and I were never close, but because of my parents, I did what I could to help. I had a steady income, and while it was not enough to support them completely, I gave her what I could each month. My parents also helped, and somehow she got by. The first few months were tough. She had no education, no work experience, and no skills that could get her a decent job. She had to start from the bottom, working whatever job she could get. If she wanted to move up, she needed to put in the time and effort. But she also had 3 kids at home, and she could not just leave them alone. She considered hiring a babysitter, but it was too expensive. That meant she had to depend on family or friends to watch the kids. But our parents were still working, and I had my own job to deal with. Her friends were busy with their own lives and responsibilities, so none of them were willing to step up. In the end, she was stuck working low-paying jobs because they gave her the flexibility to come home quickly. She could not afford a babysitter for too long, and if she worked full-time, the cost of childcare would have been more than what she earned. This continued for years, and over time, I could tell Diana was growing resentful. She saw her own children as the reason her life was not moving forward. To her, they were the ones keeping her from success. I would visit her from time to time, not for her sake, but for the kids. I wanted to make sure they were okay. Even though I was not close to Diana, I was not about to let 3 innocent children suffer because of their mother's bad decisions. My parents and I checked in on them regularly, and every time, the kids had something to say about how she treated them. She would yell at them over the smallest things, snapping at them just for acting like kids. She had no patience and took out all her frustrations on them. Their lives were miserable, and I hated seeing them like that. I wanted to take them away from that house, but there was nothing I could do. She was their mother, and legally, she had every right to keep them with her. Besides, she was still receiving child support and making an effort to provide for them. It was not like she was neglecting them completely. I felt bad for her situation, but I felt even worse for the kids. Things got even worse when she started dating again. Every time a relationship failed, she blamed her children. In her mind, the only reason her boyfriends left was that they did not want to be with someone who had kids. But I knew that was not the real issue. She never told them about her kids right away. She would date these men for weeks, sometimes months, before bringing it up. And when they found out she had 3 kids, they felt like she had been hiding something. I told her over and over again that she needed to be upfront about it. A single mother should not be keeping something like that a secret. It made her look dishonest, but she refused to believe it. In her mind, the kids are the only problem. She started taking her anger out on them more and more. She constantly reminded them that their father had abandoned her, and that she could just as easily do the same. She made them feel like they were a burden, like they were the reason she was alone and struggling. For years, I watched this go on, and every time I thought about stepping in. I even considered taking the kids and running. But there was nothing I could do. There was no real abuse, no major neglect, just a mother who made her kids feel unwanted. If I had tried to take them away, I would have lost. And worse, Diana would have made sure I never saw them again. So I did what I could. I made sure I was always there for them. My parents were too old to be the support system they needed, but I could be. They knew they could come to me with anything. They could not talk to their mother, but they could talk to me. Whether it was school, friendships, or just needing someone to listen, I was always there. So when they turned 18, it was no surprise that they packed up and left her house. They could live wherever they wanted now, and they chose to live with me. Diana was furious. She said she had wasted 18 years raising them, and now they had abandoned her. She told me that if I wanted to be their parent so badly, I should have stepped in earlier instead of waiting until they were grown. I wanted to tell her the truth. She had not raised them. They had raised themselves. She had always been either at work or chasing men, and she never put them first. They chose the person who had actually cared about them over the one who had only ever blamed them for her own unhappiness. But I kept my mouth shut. There was no point in arguing. After that, she cut contact with all of us. The kids wanted nothing to do with her, and she wanted nothing to do with them. Even our parents stopped hearing from her. It has been 7 years now, and honestly, I have no idea what she is doing. But I do know that her kids are thriving. My nephew went to medical school and is now a pediatrician. One of my nieces has a literature degree and is a teacher. Her twin sister owns her own hair salon. I helped them when they needed it. Loans, support, whatever I could do. And now, they're all living on their own, completely independent. They only lived with me for about 4 years. But even then, they spent most of their time in college. They did not want to go back to a house where they never felt wanted. It has been 2 years since they moved out, and I could not be prouder. I never expected anything in return. I did it because it was the right thing to do. But last week, on my 48th birthday, they surprised me. They threw a party for me, planned by my nephew. I tried to pay for it, but he insisted. He said he finally had the means to do something for me, and he wanted to. At the end of the night, they sat me down and told me they wanted to give me something. Now that they were financially stable, they wanted to thank me properly. They had decided to write me a check, not as repayment, but as a token of appreciation. I told them it was not necessary, but they insisted. I was touched, so I posted about it on social media, just to show my appreciation. I had no idea it would cause a problem. My sister and I had not spoken in years, so I did not think she would care about my post. I was blocked on every platform, and as far as I knew, she had no way of seeing it. I figured it was safe to share. Diana had never made any effort to reach out. Not to me, not to our parents, and definitely not to her kids. They had cut ties with her first when they left home, but that was entirely her fault. She gave them every reason to walk away. The least she could have done was try. She could have picked up the phone, asked about them, or tried to mend things. Instead, she let the years go by without a second thought. So, I assumed she was fine with it. Then, out of nowhere, I got a message from her. I had not expected to hear from her after 6 years, but looking back, I should have. The moment she realized her kids were successful, she must have sensed an opportunity. Like a bloodhound sniffing out a fresh trail, she came running, not to reconnect, not to make amends, but to see how much she could get. She told me she had seen my post and wanted to talk. She admitted she had made mistakes and had not been the best mother, but now she wanted to rebuild her relationship with her kids. She claimed she missed them. She wanted another chance. She wanted me to help. She asked me to talk to them on her behalf, to convince them to give her a second chance. She said they would listen to me. It was all too convenient. I had my doubts from the start, but I decided to ignore her message instead of responding right away. I knew where this was going, and I had no interest in playing along. That evening, she called me, and that is when I finally lost my patience. She repeated everything from the message, how she wanted to reconnect, how she regretted the past, how she needed me to help bring them back in her life. I told her the truth. I told her I was not going to do that because I knew exactly what she was trying to do. She was not looking for forgiveness. She was looking for money. She had ignored them for years. and now that they were financially stable, she suddenly wanted to be a mother again? That was not regret. That was greed. If she truly cared, she would have reached out to them herself. But she did not even have the humility to do that. She wanted me to do it for her, as if they owed her something. She could not even admit that she was wrong. She still expected them to come to her, even though she was the one who had driven them away. When I told her this, she tried to argue. She swore she was not after money and acted offended that I would even suggest it. I told her I was not suggesting it. I was certain of it. It was clear as day. She then turned the conversation on me, saying that I had taken everything from her. First, I had stolen her children, and now I was stealing the money that should have been hers. That was when I made my final decision. I told her that, at first, I was hesitant about accepting the money. I did not feel like I needed it. But after this conversation, I had changed my mind. Now, I was taking every single cent because she did not deserve it. She was furious. Now, she is on social media, crying about it to anyone who will listen. She is telling everyone how cruel I was, how I took her children and their money, and how I have made her life miserable. Some of my relatives think I went too far. They say I sounded harsh, that I looked greedy, and that I should apologize. That is why I am here, to ask if I was wrong for telling my sister that she does not deserve the money her children gave me. Update 1. After hearing what some relatives had to say, I decided to talk to my nephew and nieces. Some people suggested I should have handled things differently, so I wanted to hear their thoughts. Turns out, they already knew about everything. A few family members had told them what was happening, and they had planned to talk to me about it soon. When I asked them if I did the right thing, they did not hesitate. They told me I was absolutely right. My nephew was especially vocal. He said Diana had never been a real mother to him. If anyone had been a parental figure in his life, it was me. My niece agreed. He had always been the outspoken one, so it did not surprise me that he had the strongest reaction. My nieces were more emotional about it, but they felt the same way. My nephew was angry. He said Diana had no right to come back after all these years and act like she was the victim. He reminded me that even when she was getting child support, she constantly made them feel unwanted. She treated them like a burden when they were just kids trying to survive in her house. He made it clear they were never going to speak to her again. They also told me I should stand up for myself. Since she was already trying to turn people against me online, they thought I should tell my side of the story. They encouraged me to post the truth. So, I guess that is what I'm going to do. Honestly, I am relieved they took my side. My parents, on the other hand, are staying out of it. They told me they do not want to get involved. That surprised me. Diana cut them off too. She has not spoken to them in 6 years, just like she has not spoken to me or her kids. And yet, even with all that, they still refuse to take a stance. I find that strange, and honestly, I am a little disappointed. But at least my nephew and nieces support me. That is what matters. Now, a lot of people have asked why I never tried to take custody of the kids when they were younger. If I knew their mother was treating them badly, why did I not step in? Well, as much as I hated how she acted, it was not enough for me to win custody. Diana was not physically abusive. She was not neglecting them in a way that would have been considered illegal. She was just a bad mother. She was emotionally distant, mean, and selfish. But that was not something the courts would take the kids away for. They had already lost their father. If I had tried to take them away from her, the courts would have favored keeping the family together. And even if I had tried, I knew Diana well enough to know what would have happened. She would have cut me out completely. She would have taken them somewhere far away, somewhere I could never reach them. So I did what I thought was best. Instead of risking losing them, I made sure I was always there. Maybe I could have done more, but at the time, it seemed like the safest choice. I did not regret it. They turned out strong. They turned out kind. They turned out better than she ever could have made them. And now, they're free of her for good. The court would always lean toward keeping families together. That was just how the system worked. If I had tried to take legal action against Diana, she would have fought back in the only way she knew how, by making sure I never saw the kids again. She would have packed up and moved, taken them somewhere far away, and I would have lost them completely. And realistically, I would not have one anyway. She was their mother, and even though she was not a good one, she still provided for them. The court would not have taken them away, just because she was emotionally unavailable and selfish. So out of the only thing I could, I stayed close. I made sure I was always there when they needed me. I did not know if it was the best decision, but at the time, it seemed like the only one that made sense. Maybe I could have done more, but there was no way to know how things would have turned out. At least this way, I knew they were safe. For years, I wondered if I should have done something different. But looking at where they are now, I know I did something right. They made it. They are happy. They are successful. I was there for them when it mattered, and that is what counts. I did not feel guilty about any of it. Update 2. It has been a week since I got that message from Diana. Today, my phone has been ringing nonstop. Family members, distant relatives, people I have not spoken to in ages, are suddenly calling me to tell me how wrong I was. Apparently, Diana has been busy. She has been running her mouth, telling everyone how I stole her children and her money. She has been making herself out to be the victim, spinning a whole sob story about how I ruined her life. I ignored it at first. I was busy with work and had no time for this nonsense. But today, I decided I had had enough. After a conversation with my nephew and nieces, I made my own post. I laid everything out, the full truth. I told the whole story from the beginning to now. I did not just share my side of things. I shared theirs too, because I do not think people really understand what those kids went through. Diana was not just a bad mother. She made their lives miserable. They grew up listening to her blame them for her failures. They had to hear over and over again how she had given up everything for them, how their father abandoned them, how they were the reason her relationships failed. She spent years making them feel like they were nothing more than an obstacle in her way. And now that they were finally happy, finally free of her, she was trying to drag them back, just because she wanted a piece of their success. She had the audacity to act like she was the victim when, in reality, she was the one who had hurt everyone else. So I put it all out there. Since she wanted attention so badly, I gave her some. Now, the same relatives who were lecturing me a few days ago are suddenly backtracking. Now they see the truth. Now they want to apologize. I do not care. I did not post my story for their approval. I did it because people needed to know what really happened. And now that it is done, I am ready to move on. I have no interest in reconnecting with Diana. I was perfectly happy for the last 6 years without her in my life, and I know her kids feel the same way. She could go ahead and play the victim all she wants. But the truth is out now. If she had just asked for money, maybe she would have gotten some. But instead, she had to pretend she actually cared. And now she has nothing. Update 3. It has been 1 day since I made my post. Today, Diana finally decided to fight back. Instead of calling me, instead of trying to talk things out like a normal person, she went straight to the comment section. She started posting, trying to make it seem like I was lying. That was a mistake, because the moment she did, her kids showed up. One by one, they started replying, calling her out on her lies. They reminded her of the things she did to them, the way she treated them, the things she said that she probably hoped they had forgotten. It went on for about an hour. I will be honest, I enjoyed every second of it. She had spent so much time trying to paint herself as the poor, abandoned mother, and now she was being exposed in front of everyone. There was no way out for her, no way to twist the story, no way to lie her way back into anyone's good graces. After about an hour, she started deleting her comments. She must have realized she was losing, but by then it was too late. Too many people had seen what happened. Too many people had watched her get called out, and I think she finally understood that there was no coming back from it. After deleting her comments, she took the final step. She blocked me. She also blocked her own kids. I guess that was her way of surrendering. Good, because if she thought she was going to win this fight, she was delusional. Morally, logically, any way you look at it, we had the upper hand. I thought that would be the end of it. But later that day, she sent me one last message. She said she hoped I was happy now. She said I had painted her as the villain and turned everyone against her. I laughed when I read it, because that was exactly what she had been trying to do to me. She started this. She went to the family first. She spread the lies first. But now that things had backfired, now that she was the one being shamed, she suddenly could not handle it. If you cannot take it, do not dish it out. I ignored her message. We are all going back to ignoring her, just like we have for years. She's not worth our time. She has proven that.